Right. Right. The next bit is setting up the thrust washers and the chain alignment. What you usually find is you've got these shims that sort of pack out the thrust washers. We set these up usually with 3 on to start with. Now, when fitting these, always make sure that the bevel goes on first, so that sort of clears the return onto the thrust face. We always start off just running 3 shims, so that basically that's set up then as a sort of rough guide. Then we put the pulleys on. So just pop that on. Okay. And then pop the sprocket on.
Has that got the key in it already then?
No. We always leave the keys off.
Yeah.
Setting those up. Because if you put the keys on, you can't get the shims off.
Yeah.
And then just tighten that up. Just with the hands enough. And then just push it right back so it's sat against the seat. Yeah, that's it. Then we'll just put the same as the other side, and then we can we'll just run through the setting up the chain alignment. Make sure that both camshafts are back against the thrust faces, and just with a plastic hammer and a drift, just make sure, just tap that very, very gently, just to make sure that the intermediate shaft is seated right back as well.
Yeah.
Right, and what we use is a ground straight edge, and a vernier, digital vernier.
And obviously the sprocket alignment is a critical item, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. If sprockets aren't aligned properly, the chain will run out of alignment, and it'll damage the teeth and damage the chain, and eventually cause chain failure. And once the chain fails, basically it bends all the valves and destroys your engine. So it's important that this is actually done. Now, the way you set it up is get your straight edge on there and your vernier, and you set it back. This hole here goes all the way back to the intermediate shaft sprocket. So basically that's set up like that. 0 your digital vernier, and double check it a couple of times just to make sure. 0.07. Do it a few times, you know when you're sort of about right. So we've had a couple of 0.6s, so I think that should be 0. 0.01, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Now, this sprocket runs in alignment with the sprocket which you've just set up on inside there. So really, it's just a case of, with a steady hand, making sure your gasket, your face is there and are corrosion free. Set that up, and then once again, this should be 0. So you just set that up so it touches that, and that's 0.19. Now you're allowed 0.25 tolerance, so that's within spec.
Right.
Do the same the other side. Now, if you're not left-handed, it's slightly trickier. That's 5605. Always do it a few times just in case, and then you sort of get a mean setting. 5633. 5645. So yeah, we've got 5633 a few times. So and then basically double checking your. Oh, that's right.
Ah, the little Bible.
Absolutely, yeah. This is basically it. These dimensions go all the way up to the SCs. All the earlier spec engines are the same dimensions. As far as geometry is concerned, they're all the same. And this basically works, tells you how to sort of set them up. This is obviously not using a digital vernier; it's just a mathematical way of doing it with a sort of a normal type of analog type of vernier. So it makes the picture a bit clearer actually, because you set it up on 0 against that sprocket there, and obviously the chain runs up to this sprocket, so that's got to be 0 there, so 0 to 0 within its manufacturer's spec of 0.25, which is there. And then there's a setback distance the other way of 54.8 from obviously there to the sprocket there. So then we just basically reset the shims according to that. So okay, so I should double check this. Right, we've done the just popped a couple of shims in there, and now it's exactly come out at 54.86. Which is supposed to be 54.8, so it's within its 0.25 tolerance. So that's all set up and ready to go. So what we do next? Take it all apart again. Obviously not mixing up the sides, just in case there is a discrepancy on the sizes. Pull off the inner part of the vernier. Make sure the shims are on there inside. Set the woodruff keys directly upwards, or on stock cams you'll find a dot punch mark, and you set that directly upwards as well. Make sure the engine's on TDC, which it is.
Z1,
on the Z1. And then that's a start setting for actually putting the rockers in and setting up your cam timing. With standard cams, instead of these ground ones, you usually find they're relatively accurate. Sometimes you need to wiggle around with the aftermarket cams, just sort of get them exactly right. So we'll just go through the timing procedure, putting the chain guides on, and just running through doing the cam timing and fitting up the rocker shafts.
I suppose it sounds a bit basic to say it, but I mean, there is a possibility that could be number 4 at the top there.
Well, yeah, exactly that. But at this stage, the way you set them up, it's with the keyways directly upwards. That whether it's number 1 or number 4, it's the camshaft that depicts that. So a setup like this, it's set up so it's number 1 TDC, and then number 4 is actually on the rocking, with the valve where the rocker's rocking on overlap. So as I say, it's just that's just the proper way of setting up exactly that. So it's just a setup procedure which you use. Okay. As we went through when we were building up the short motor, the way the blades sit, where the guides sit, you always have the long end facing the gear. So these ones are facing that gear down the bottom, and then these ones will be fitting facing the top sprocket. So you sort of pop it over, making sure you don't trap the chain, because there's a guide post there. And just get it on there, tap it, and then just gently that's it. That's all it needs. Just make sure they just sit there flush. And there's a a small, if you see inside there's a small detent, plastic detent, and that sits on the.
Picks up the ridge.
That's it. Yeah. You can see the ridges there.
Yeah.
So once again, we can just pop that on over the top. Hold the chain out of the way, and put it around the right way. And then once again, just fingers and thumbs today. So, nothing on there, so that just sits on there. When you put the chain chests on, always make sure that you sort of put it on and make sure you get the chain around that, because the chain can't go around there. So so when it's one of those little tricks that I think, oh gosh, once or twice I've had to just take the stud out to thing and then just rebond it back in there. So.
Okay.
Okay, right, and then we're going to fit the keys in now, which is right. So the keys are in. That's why you put the keys in last, because you can't get the shims out for setting up the alignment. Yeah, so that basically should just pop over the top. He says. I've got one on the other side here. Then just use a small. Just with a brass drift, just tap that over the top if it's slightly tight.
Yeah.
Do the same with the other side. This way you won't damage the vernier of the pulley. Okay, once again, just make sure they're facing directly upwards. And the fiddly bit. Just sits over like that. Just put the nut on loosely with the wavy washer.
Yeah.
Just pull it up. That's alright. That's all seated in properly. And then run the other side as well. Making sure the chains aren't sort of not sitting on the guides properly, or you're folded back down the back. It's quite a fiddly job. Sometimes you'll find, as you build it, always make sure when you put the guides in and things like that, that the chain hasn't sort of folded back, so it's got like a folded link around the back of the sprocket, because you'll never get this on. It'll never fit. Sometimes you have to just take off drop the lower blade off, and then just sort of wiggle it around, and it'll actually fall into place. But luckily, this is done quite well. It's nice actually.
Yeah.
I'm quite happy with that. Right, it's basically the rest of it. It's just we'll fit the idlers now. Just pop those in. That fits on. We've had these all apart and checked the bushes inside the sprockets, and then this one fits in there. Lube it all up. Just make sure, because obviously the tensioner sort of works on this one, so just make sure everything's nice and free. That's all in there. We've lubed up inside the shafts there as well. So once again, it sort of sits there. Make sure it's nice and free on its movement, on its travel there. Okay. Right, what we're doing is just bleeding all the oil out of these. Don't ever force these back. Really sort of wind the vise up on them. Just crack the bleed screw through, and then just gently apply pressure, and it'll just leak out, and then back it off, and then because it'll pump back up again. And what you're trying to achieve is just getting all the oil out of it. So then we'll reprime it again once it's actually into the engine.
So do you turn the vise so that the piston's fully down then?
Yeah, well, just gently. You'll feel the resistance
as
you go, If I just left this now, that would probably just back off and then fall out of the vise. But I'm just gently pushing it back. And with hydraulic lifters as well, with the pressure tensioners on the later engines, exactly the same. If you force them back with the vise heavily, it'll just damage the seals inside. They're not designed to do that. So once again, it's very, very gently. Just keep working it back. And with the other ones, obviously, you've got the pin that goes through to lock it, and that makes life a lot easier when you're sort of assembling. But what we're trying to achieve is basically that's still pumping up, so there's still oil in there. We want it like this one, which I did earlier. Here's one I prepared earlier, and so that's just nice and spongy at the moment. And then we can prime that up with clean oil in it in the engine once we got to that stage. These are actually fitted with this American device, which I mean, a lot of people change these tensioners we discussed before for pressure tensioners because these collapse, but generally speaking they only collapse after they've done like 100,000 miles. A lot of these engines aren't going to achieve that sort of mileage, so I'm still a great believer of actually running these type of tensioners. I mean, the Quattro at tick over, it's a nicer unit, and you don't have all the heavy pipe work, and it's an original look. We've got rally car engines because you have to run these in rally cars in the historic stuff, because they're not allowed to run pressure tensioners because that was fitted to later engines. But we've got rally car engines out there, and we've never seen a failure with these, or any sort of being sort of detrimental to say sort of longevity of the engine's life. You know,
Right.
so yeah, I'm either or really as far as these sort of things are concerned.
What actually fails in them when they go there?
It's just there's a one-way valve in there that stops them backing off. It's a ball and a spring, and the seat just wears basically underneath the ball. So that's all it is. But I'm just trying to think what these are now, cost-wise. I don't think there's much in it, to be honest with you, between buying a pressure tension kit and actually buying these tensioners. So, you know, maybe it's a false economy to stick these in and just, you know, if you're building an engine, just put a set of pressure tensioners in. But as I said, everybody automatically, oh, it's got pressure tensioners in it, you know, it's like the upgrade to have. But, you know, it's like trends, isn't it? You know, it's like the thing to have, isn't it? Well, once again, those are all bled through now. We just lift that up. I might have to back this up a bit more actually. That's quite a way. As you can see, with this, we're going to have to take that off and bleed them right back. It shows you how worn the engine was before we rebuilt it, with the chain had stretched, because this obviously was running like that.
The idler.
So that's a good example of how much the chains actually stretch. And the chain guides wear, and other components wear as well. So so we're going to have to take these off and put it through. Let's have a look at this side. Yeah, and that's exactly the same. So yeah, we've got to bleed this right back. Take the saver off and bleed these right back. So okay, well, I've taken the locks off and bled them back through, so they're sort of spongy again. Now just gently push down the, pop it in. Simple as that. Just make sure everything's seated back properly once again. We won't bleed these through just yet. We'll do that right at the end, or as we actually go through locking up the camshafts. But now we're sort of set up so that everything's at TDC. I'm just going to move this one around so it's in. With the tensioner in, there's obviously tension on there, but it's still spongy, but it's enough to just pull the chain tight. The cam obviously set up right, as we discussed before, and TDC. Look for where the pin actually goes in, so it's on a clean hole. and that's then sort of locked up in its primary setup position. Pop the nut over the top, just so it doesn't all sort of come apart, and just sort of put a bit of preload on the Belleville washer, on the wavy washer, just so it's not going to go anywhere. Run through the same procedure with the other side. With the tensioner on this one, you've got to back the tensioner off. Find the hole, which is down there. Okay. Same with that. And I'll just pull down the blade again. A second. So pop that back into place. So you've got the tensioner on there. Okay, and then we're basically ready to do a fit number 1 exhaust and inlet rocker, and set the cam timing, and swivel it over 360 to set up number 4.